I'm going to make my apologies up front. I haven't actually presented in front of 3D live people for quite a while, so I'm really hoping my presentation button clicks in myself, let alone on this. So, welcome. I'd really like to say thank you all for coming, particularly those who maybe have come under their own steam. These are hard times, and I really appreciate you making it. I'm Natural England's Senior Specialist for Public Engagement. I've been doing it for just over a year. But I'm actually standing here, and although they're invisible, I do wear two hats here. So prior to my work with Natural England, and still outside of those walls, I'm a professional artist, and I specialise in working with science organisations and institutions to try and get messages across and connect with the wider public. Can everybody hear me? Because if I stand in front of this, being a very small person, you might not. Okay. So I thought today that firstly I would try and present, I would try and present a little bit about my own methodology about engagement, but also with my other hat on, maybe give you a little bit of a sort of arty thought that I've been. So, why engagement matters and the backdrop that we're currently living in is where I thought we should start. Most of the time people start with engagement from thinking, engagement, I'm going to go forward and do stuff. But actually there's a couple of steps before that. So, a useful amount of breeding pairs of birds out there, 83 million, 60 odd million people, 10 million doggies, and I just want you to see that number at the bottom. So this is from the Royal Horticultural Society. And when I worked this out, it's just under the size of Wales. So it's not a huge amount of space. I just want you to keep that in your minds as we go forward in this presentation. So, people, they're the ones that we're dealing with in terms of trying to build nature connections, but also trying to give people an opportunity to feel that they are empowered and part of the nature and environment discussion. And over the last few years, I think it's been really, really noticeable the amount of work that's gone into evaluating the connections between health and nature. And I think all of us sitting here hopefully get something from our connection with nature, but for many this is an opportunity that may not come their way. So anything we can do to reinforce those connections, give people access, allow them to get the benefits in terms of health and well-being from nature is definitely worthwhile. I've been working with the library service over the last sort of year or so, trying to build a national connection with them, and we're nearly there. But already in Suffolk, they've been running nature connection courses and opportunities through the library services there, and they have in 6 months saved over £300,000 from the health service, and it's quantifiable. We've actually been able to prove this. So it shows that through that sort of community hub focus, that we can build things that are useful for health and for nature. So do you remember that 700 and something thousand of gardens? And these were the latest figures I could find. I know that those figures are also part of the fact that a large amount of sea and water-based estate has been added to our protected areas. But I've sort of worked out that the UN reckons we're meant to have 9 square metres for our own health and well-being of somehow our own space. If you divide the 68 million by the 700 and something thousand of gardens, actually we only have just over 10 square metres. Now maths isn't my strong point, I have to tell you, that's my artist head to tell you that too. But it's no wonder that our public sites, our areas of natural beauty, our SSSIs and our NLRs are under such pressure. People need space. So, if that's the backdrop, we know that actually the chances are the survival of nature really relies on the survival of people and their well-being. And that connection of people with nature is probably our greatest tool in terms of being able to conserve what we love about the natural world for everybody's benefit. the RSPB came out with this, and I thought it was a really exciting statement in as far as it was really recognised, it was front and centre, and I hope it's something that we can all act upon and use in our own. So, nature and people, both benefit from engagement. So the more of it we can do, the more I hope that nature and people benefit. So, there's my first little conclusion. Nothing flourishes unless everything flourishes. So, that's pretty simple, isn't it? People plus nature equals perfect. You're there. If only. But people are complicated. We are diverse in nature. We have a huge amount of arrays of people from backgrounds and stances and thoughts and viewpoints. And nature is complex. I'm from Norfolk, and I've been working on a site for 5 years before I took up this role, deep in the Norfolk Broads, where the swallowtail butterfly has one of its last sort of places to hide and survive. But it only will live on one plant. That's it. Once the milkweed has gone, then milk parsley, then that's it. And so we would trail round this site, trying to count how many milk pasties we have left, because that will tell us how many swallowtails we might get this year. It's tough. So that complication of us, plus the complexity of nature, makes life interesting. So I'm going to ask you all to do something. Some of you may have seen, or you might have sidestepped it, but you're not getting money. A piece of coloured paper on your seat on you. If you can see one, if you're sitting on one, if it's next to you, be brave. Pick it up. I know there are people who try to avoid it, it's no good. So what I would like you to do, if you're a person holding the paper, is just look at it for a minute. And imagine that this is maybe the viewpoint, the day, the attitude of someone who's visiting the site today. I'm hoping that some of you recognise some of the things that I've written. And what I would really like you to do is to pass this to someone beside you, behind you, say hello if you haven't met them before, but pass that message on. So you've got 10 seconds. Pass your long message on to someone hopefully you don't know. Yes. See, all you people at the back there, you're regretting sitting there because you didn't get a company. So, on those cards, I tried to put the things that people have said to me when I've been out on site. Sure, I brought another pin there. I really want to set my easel up here because I want to catch the sun over there. And it's like on a beautiful piece of beef or whatever. I'm like, people are out, they're living their normal lives. People visit our sites maybe at times of need, when they need that 2 minutes piece, when they're trying to capture something for themselves, when they want that relaxation, that connection in nature. And in order for us to know how we're going to reach them, we've got to find a way to reach the whole. Someone doesn't come with just their nature hats on when they come to our sites. They come with all those other things in their mind, like, did I put the washing on? Oh, I've got to buy some more coffee. Oh, I wonder where that pee gets from. All those domestic demands. And yet, we're asking them to make a big leap ourselves, to forget all of that, and to come here with just their nature on, and to consider nature above all else. So in order to get that message across, we've got to find ways that we can get it to them. So, empathy. It's a weird word. It's been bandied about a bit like engagement quite a lot. But in our role, particularly for those who work in this sector, empathy is the key to starting understanding. And that's understanding on both sides. It's key to building empowerment. It's key to building understanding. And so understanding that when you're meeting with people, that empathy must be front and centre is really key in that getting our messages across. It's obvious, it's a balancing act, isn't it? And there we are, stuck in the middle. We work in this profession. others, and we've constantly got to try and balance those two empathy circles of nature and people. But when we get it right, when we get this sweet spot, where we get people to begin to think about how they are part of nature, not something that's beside it or outside of it, or something that it gets done to or done to them. It becomes about being part of it, and that's the key really to any great engagement, trying to get to that sweet spot. So, conclusion 2. People, empathy, understanding the nature. We get nature recovery, turn it on its head, its mirror image. We begin to get nature connection for people and the health benefits they need. So, this is where I start to slide my other hand. And hopefully begin to think about, okay, so what's the story, what's the narrative we're giving? So are we good hosts? Do we consider ourselves hosts when someone comes to a site that we manage or we work on? What are we actually presenting? So, I started in this because I've been working with various NNRs who've been holding their festival this year. So I've been out to lots of different sites, and I have to tell you, some of them I was slightly concerned about. I have spoken to my NNR managers, they know that I've got views on this. However, it made me start to think about entrances and exits. So this is my arty head here. So if we're entering a library, a cathedral, we're visiting our nan, we're going to the doctors, a police station, the dentist, going to a school, as we walk up to those buildings, as we cross that threshold, things click. We may not even realise it, but they do. There is a certain twitch in our behaviour. And so I started looking at what's the difference between entrance and exit. Because quite often they're the same thing up. It's a door, it swings that way. So, entrance. Straightforward. Door, gate, a right to enter. So, I began to think about, okay, what were my reactions when I moved somewhere? You know, I began to think about that holiday that many of us had to put off, and maybe this year had a chance to get involved in. What I felt when I reached those destinations, what promise did they hold? And so I began to think about both the positive and the negative. I can tell you my husband would be in a real hard time if it was like this when I turned up. But we do, don't we? We suddenly get that message about value, about what it means to me, how I'm going to react in that space. So I began to think about what our entrances and exits said. Which one did we do? Where are we? What sort of vibe are we giving off? They are beautiful pictures, aren't they? I know that they're the ones that unfortunately we may wish to enhance. And so I began to think about, okay, what happens to the person who's visiting now? So you know those cards that you had? That person who's looking for their 2 minutes of tranquility, that person who just needs to walk the dog, that person who's discovered that they've been made redundant today, and this is what they first come across. What that does to them in terms of their behaviour beyond that threshold. Does it make them think, oh, it's a triple SI, I better be really good. Or does it make them think, you want to hear something else? So I did some research, and if you haven't read this paper, I would really, really recommend it. Irini Saraxi, who's named here, has done some fantastic work looking about how arts and engagement can work together, how arts and the environment can work together. It's a brilliant piece of work. And I read through it, and I'm sure like many of you, I get things to read that's sort of like 82 pages long, and I get to about 15 pages. However, this document had some really fantastic pointers about understanding people's behaviour when they reach sites and what people go in for. And the first one on a long list of reasons that the public had given why those places was this, escape and freedom. Do we recognise that? Is that what we want to get when we go for a walk without maybe our uniform on or our sort of standardised t-shirt when we're out at the weekend on our own time? That's what I get. So the message of entry isn't really, are we saying exit? And I was like, oh, I better find out. And this is the point where I thought, yeah, there is something that we can all consider. This is Cambridge Dictionary's definition of freedom. And at a mitigation conference, I thought that was particularly useful. Because if we're trying to find ways to mitigate maybe the actions of either industrial or social behaviour, then maybe we have to consider, are we really saying entrance or exit? So, my final conclusion. Engagement is key to whatever we do if we want to see nature thrive and conservation grow. But it's also about us looking to the future. What does future movements bring into our gambit? I was working with some artists who are working on 3D printing. They are currently creating nest boxes and bat boxes out of Costa coffee grinds. Does new technology open up new opportunities for us? Empathy. It empowers because it means that we're bringing someone into our circle and we're having that overlap with them, that sweet spot home. Exit. It can mean escape to rather than escape from. And maybe we have to look at our sides with, as I say here, fresh eyes, or ask someone who's never been to a site before to come and tell you what they think. And maybe those things would help us in our journey towards mitigation and also engaging with the public. Thank you. It's been really helpful. I was very nervous today, as you can see. I'm very happy today, no stress. Is a comment from one of my members of the public. It's true now of me. Thank you very much.
Has anyone got any questions for Cordelia? Paul?
I'll go well. I quite like the whole freedom piece, but I also noticed that means freedom constraint, which ultimately we talk about a lot today. So I suppose my kind of, we've done this sort of engagement for a very long time. You go right back to the Berkeley's book on environmental interpretation, all of that. We've done this for 30 years. The world has moved a long way in that time. The numbers of people moving, the professions moved a long way. Also, context has.
Yeah.
Because right now, what we're saying to people is this is, or what we should be trying to say to people, finally mentioned before, it is now a life support system, a life support issue. You know, we grapple with that in Wildlife Trust, where what does Wildlife Trust actually mean in all the context?
Yeah.
What you actually what it is we need to do. So I just wonder where kind of NER, where others are in that kind of thinking of moving that into the next kind of iteration of think about. How do you get those really impactful messages across?
I think that's why really my last bit of presentation was posing a question rather than necessarily having the solution or the answer. I wish I did. However, that whole thing about freedom, I agree with you, you know, we want people to get all the benefits of freedom, but we want them to do it in such a way that they don't leave a footprint on what else lies below their feet. And in order to do that, that's why I sort of focused on this entrance or exit scenario, because unfortunately, I think I've heard loads of sites and I understand all the reasons for it. I don't think we're making the most of our entrances to give those behavioural nudges about the fact that you're entering somewhere special. I'll go to so many where there is a rusty drawing pin holding up a piece of paper that's sat there for 6 months that you can't read anymore, and it's just got another one on top of it. And I absolutely understand the reasons. But if we're saying it's special, just make it special. Let's make that opportunity to visit somewhere special a threshold so someone feels it. And I think, I'm not suggesting we put gold gates around and it becomes like Disney. What I'm just saying is sometimes fresh eyes looking at our entrances can begin to point out things we haven't noticed before, whether that's because of access, whether that's because of, you know, a pothole that's then going to stop someone with a pushchair going there. Is it about, are we giving the right information? Are we appealing to the whole? So I absolutely agree with you, but it's about us maybe taking that empathetic step for ourselves outside of the job, outside of the role we play, and imagine us visiting it as someone who's never been there before. And hopefully then we may be able to build on that messaging in different ways, whether it's through social media or on site, but in a way that's about not just saying it's special for nature, but it's special for us, as you say, the lungs of maybe our wider society. So yeah, that's my sort of take of it. I wish I had the magic one with the answer, but it's definitely something that I know from the sites I've been to this year, re-examining that physical and visual thing of entries is really quite key. And one of the things that I'm looking at the moment, I'm trying to find the right research model for is, for instance, when we say an area of outstanding natural beauty, and then we say a national nature reserve, do even those words begin to start a different type of behaviour? Does that beauty click a different button? I don't know, but I'm really interested to know how we begin to look at those things that we've used as academic labels for many places, how we begin to translate that into something that maybe the public feels more open to.
Yes.
Oh, I'm interested in this whole entrance thing, Bobby. I'm thinking about some of the evidence about the nature sites that you go and visit, that you travel to, that are like a destination site, are a lot less accessible for the large majority of people. And the large majority who do go and visit them are probably already won over and to the cause, if you will.
Yes.
And what we need is nature that's on everybody's doorstep, so there isn't a barrier of entrance. And how we merge these two ideas that we need entrances potentially to be to signify that this site is special and this site is a big deal, but at the same time not increasing the barrier of accessibility, and how you, I'm just wondering about balancing those two. I'm not saying they're contradictory at all, but just sort of balance.
I think you're absolutely right. There is a huge balance to be struck. And some of it is about the physical, actual things that we do. So I was looking at, for instance, I think it's Aston Rowan, Natural England has got a site where they've got a lot of different types of gates and entrance things that they try out with a variety of people who've got various access needs. And I started looking at those and thinking, okay, yeah, I understand there's always going to be a need for a gate somewhere occasionally, but what else can we do? So I was looking at, and again, this is sort of with my arty hat on, I'm trying to find a physical solution maybe to a philosophical problem. You know, is it about, could we put stepping stones that says, you know, your 6 stepping stones as you walk into a site that say, you know, you're now walking on triple SI, this is the video for 1,000 years, this is the, so that people are actually joining literally in something without, as you say, necessarily putting up something that's going to be off-putting. Is there another mechanism? And I know that quite often, strategically, those things are left to the very last point of discussion. But actually, because we're dealing with people, because we're dealing with behaviour and thoughts and emotions, they actually have to be the gearing for any mechanisms rather than necessarily top-down strategic thinking. I think it has to be bottom-up strategic thinking in particular.
Time for one more question if anyone's got a question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.